Hello there! Today I want to talk about the future of industrial design. How will AI impact the field of industrial design? What softwares will we be using? How will we be using them? And how will the work of a designer be different in 5 to 10 years compared to how it is now, right? So I really want to draw an image today about what the programs that designers will be using in the future potentially look like, and how the daily life of a designer will be impacted by the integration of AI into the industry and the design workflow. So this is the industrial design process, the product design process that we currently are deploying, right, in most industrial design fields. And we already noticed that there's a change with the available AI tools from today, but I think the change will be much more dramatic in the next 4 or 5 years, right? So now we'll go through all the different phases one by one and want to talk briefly about how we are doing them at the moment and how I expect for them to change in the in the upcoming future. So at first we have the research phase, right? So what we mostly use at the moment is search engines like Google to just get a basic idea of like who are the competitors, do we have papers and studies that confirm our understanding or give us new insights into how the product is being used. We look at online markets like Amazon, Etsy, right? Look at reviews. What are things that people consistently have problems with, or where they dislike a product? What can we improve? What can we make better? Or what do they really enjoy? And therefore should we maintain also in the next iteration of our product, right? But we already see that this classic research is shifting as we speak, because all the search engines, online markets, papers and studies are more and more compressed into large language models like ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini. So it's already much more compressed. And also user tests, which are really expensive and hard to plan. And this is also more and more exchanged by reading data straight from the user, by employing devices that have sensors in them, right? So you know the heart rate of your user at certain times of the day. You know what they are watching on Netflix. This data now informs all these things. So we don't have to ask and test the user any longer. And what I expect research to be in the future is that there's a specific AI research agent that is really specific for collecting and summarizing all the relevant information of the data at a single location. So it will for you find the weaknesses of the product. It will for you find the strength of the product. It will for you identify relevant studies and technologies for the project. It will find for you what the market opportunities are at the moment, where trends go, and what to think about and consider. And you will just be able to ask. And my hope is that this is more reliable than ChatGPT and other large language models are at the moment, less hallucination, more based on actual data and sources. So you can actually rely on the information. And live user data is available at all times. I think we still are on our way to build the Internet of Things, but I think in 5 years we will be much closer to that reality, where we get to be able to read data from all the objects in our lives. And users will be sharing a lot of information and data through communication with AI, right? So just based on what you ask and talk about with ChatGPT, there's a lot of information to be inferred, right? What your preferences are in food, in color, in material, in cost, in price, in functionality, all these things, how you use things can all be inferred through your communication that you have with AI. Then we have ideation. So at the moment, ideation usually, broadly speaking, starts with creating mood boards and style guides, right? Where you gather images from the internet, from Pinterest, from Google. And then based on these images, you get inspired and you start sketching different ideas. More and more designers also start to use AI diffusion models like Midjourney to create these style boards and mood boards themselves. Specifically, right, you can just create your custom mood boards. You don't have to search anymore through the internet. You can just create what you want by yourself. Or also to ideate and do the initial ideation based on AI-generated images without sketching involved at all. But even if sketching is involved, there's now AI out there that you can use to improve your sketch to look much better, right? So the skill of sketching itself is becoming less important and relevant already. So soon, I think that more and more clients will develop their own sources of inspiration and include them in the brief. So they will create images with AI about what they think their product should look like. And it's then on us as designers to see if that is something that we can translate into a manufactured product or not, or where we have to apply some aesthetic tweaks. But with these tools available with AI, making things visual, everybody, even the not aesthetically trained people, can create images to communicate their ideas. So it's not limited to us anymore. It's not, we are basically, as designers, one could think that we would not be required anymore. But I also still do believe that without aesthetic training, the choices will be more emotional rather than also rational. But I also believe that there will be curated AI style libraries where you can just basically have any idea be translated into a certain style in a simple click. So it's not as important anymore to have mood boards and style guides to begin with, because you can easily translate every idea into all the different styles. So it's not a prerequisite anymore that it has to be predefined. Much more you have an idea, maybe you just have a basic morphology even, and you say, okay, this morphology, now I want to test it across 20 different styles. And then you get this idea implemented into 20 different styles, right? And then you can make a choice instead of pre-selecting 1 or 2 styles before you even start ideating, to make sure that you don't escalate the thing too much. And as I mentioned before, I think sketching is helpful even in the future, but it's no prerequisite any longer. I think you will be able to be a designer without any sketching skill at all, because everybody can make their thoughts and ideas visual just by prompting. So there's no design training or understanding of aesthetic choices required any longer. So I think the ideation as a whole will be devalued, because it will be much more ideas in a short amount of time created artificially. So it's just a curation and selection process rather than an actual idea generation process that it was before. Then we get into the concept phase. So the concept phase at the moment usually contains of digitally rendering sketches, modeling 3D concepts or rendering 3D models, and also creating the first 3D printed prototypes and potentially first context impressions of your concepts. So basically showing the concept, how it is being used or how it is expected to appear in the final setting, right? But already digital hand sketches, hand renders, it's less and less the case, right? But people, when they were using Photoshop to render a concept, I think it takes too much time compared to modeling a base shape and putting it into Keyshot, rendering it there. You already get like a very different result. Even though I think there's a huge value in sketches because they are understood as unfinished concepts compared to 3D renders. So at the moment, it takes a lot of time to also set up realistic contexts for images, realistic scenes in Keyshot, right? So that will be changing also. So in the near future, the ultra realistic AI renders will be the default. So I don't think that there will be much use of digital rendered sketches. Maybe they will be using AI to make concepts appear as digital renders, so that we keep the feeling of the ideas still being ideas rather than final concepts. But I doubt that they will still be actually rendered by hand. And also the number of concepts will not be limited to, let's say, 3 to 5 concepts, but you probably will be discussing with your clients 20 to 100 different concepts in one session to see which ones make sense, what do we like here, which details do we want to integrate here, which all of them fulfill the basic requirements of the concept. Obviously, the image to 3D will become much stronger in the upcoming years. So just based on a single image, you will be able to generate mesh geometry. I can do that already. It works more or less all right with basic geometries, not too complex surfaces and highly symmetrical shapes or bodies, right? Asymmetry, basically you can forget about it. Not that easy at this stage at least, but in the future, this will definitely be something to be resolved. Yeah, I think also the time from the kickoff of the project to the first 3D print will just be shrinking. So everything will become shorter and faster, and you can easily represent all the different ideas in context. So the rendering workflow will look completely different. I mean, even Keyshot is already implementing AI features in their software, right? I feel like they're not there yet completely, but I feel like in the future, the design stages of ideation and concept phase will no longer be separate phases, but they will be compressed into a single design stage, and the cycle times will be much shorter, while the realism will be much higher, and alterations and variations of concepts will be more easy to integrate at this level. Then we have the detailing phase, which now consists of a single concept being selected and developed further, right? So it's very time intensive to do the 3D modeling, to consider all the manufacturing requirements like draft angles and wall thicknesses. And there's still often a lot of uncertainties that have to be resolved at this stage. Like, what is the actual dimension of the PCB, the shape? We as designers at the moment, we can still work with these uncertain things and try to shape things around it with the expectation that there will be a battery at one point here, and then we will have to readjust for the specific one that we understand to get like in 2 weeks' time or something. And also we start the communication with the suppliers in this stage, right? The detailing is the most time-intensive step at the moment. And once the final concept has been chosen, it has to be made manufacturable and consider all relevant constraints and internals, right? But soon, I feel like multiple concepts will be developed in parallel because it will become much easier. The software will automate parts of the modeling, right? You can just communicate, okay, the base shape is that of a rectangular box by these and these dimensions. Or there's a fillet, there's a radius, the radius varies from front to the back, there's a cutout, there's whatever. So you can communicate these things directly and it will be made for you, right? And I also think that the software, like SolidWorks, will be able to integrate the manufacturing method as a property of the model, maybe from the get-go or throughout the process, right? So maybe you can at the beginning define already that this design is to be made as injection molding at one point. So it automatically, everything you develop will automatically include all the relevant draft angles and will consider the wall thickness from the start. So you don't have to change these things after the concept has been developed, right? Or at the end, you have a concept, let's say, in basic shapes, and then you can say, okay, now how much would this be and how would it look if it was injection molded? Then it changes the appearance and will give you a cost overview for the mold and the single part costs. How much would this cost and how would it look from sheet metal banded parts? Then it changes the design accordingly and gives you a new input in terms of costs, right? And you could do that for all the different manufacturing techniques, or you could say, okay, this part, can we split the concept in such a way that we can combine multiple manufacturing technologies for the most economic way of creating the concept without losing the aesthetic value, whatever, right? And I think then the biggest part will be automated and designer will still need to fix the issues, right? Because we are well aware of hallucinations and some things. Then maybe it gives you a wall thickness of 3 or it applies a draft angle of 3 degrees. But actually we know that 3 degrees is not necessary across the entire concept. For the domes, right, you don't need 3-degree draft angle. Maybe 1.5 is enough already. And ideally the software will be able though to, at the same level as people do, to cover high uncertainty and high detail. To, let's say at one stage you can say, okay, we don't know the exact information of the battery that is going inside, so please consider this. But after 2 days, we got the information from the supplier, so now we know the exact details, the exact voltage, whatever. And then it can adapt the design, the 3D model to facilitate that exact battery pack, right? That would be ideal. And then I also feel like the AI agent integration will be much stronger, right? Let's say it's SolidWorks and you have modeled this thing with AI already, then it will already, with your final concept design, get in touch with the AI agent from the different suppliers of the different technologies. And within half an hour, you will have, let's say, 5 to 10 different offerings in terms of what the manufacturing of this first sample could cost and when they could be delivered, right? So this will be an integral part of the software and the concept development. And you don't have to manually call all the 5 different or 10 different on your list manufacturers and talk through all the details with them, but that will be covered by the AI agent communication. So this is where I see the biggest change to evolve, right? Software will make modeling easy, like generating images is easy now, and it will integrate manufacturing requirements by default. And it can directly propose offers for the first samples, right? So in terms of skills, I would say that a designer of today in 2026 has to have an aesthetic understanding, right? They have to understand forms, shaping, styling, surfacing, all these general things that define our sense of aesthetics, proportions, composition, the basic art education, I would say, aesthetic feeling, colors, right? They also have to have an understanding of trends and the market that they operate in or their clients operating in, so they can make modern design decisions and also future-oriented product development. They have to be able to communicate visually in sketch or rendering. So AKA they have to be storytelling machines. They have to be able to sell ideas to clients. They have to be able to do 3D modeling and more animations are being requested, right? So they also potentially have to be able to animate 3D models. They have to have a deep understanding of the different manufacturing processes to create economical and sustainable products. And they serve as project managers or interdisciplinary communicators between the different departments like engineering and marketing, right? So the designer often is an intermediate between different parties of the design process. So, but I think in the future, the designer, their skill set has to dramatically change, or different focus will be applied, right? So I think for them, the communication must be much more precise and specific to the use of language-based AI models, right? So I'm talking about prompting. How do you converse with an AI that you actually get the model output that you require, that you want? I do feel that this is a huge part of what design will become, right? And there's a huge difference of the results that two different people can get based on how they communicate with the AI. I think the design of the future will have to translate data into product features and meaning, right? So they have to have a much broader understanding of the whole topic because they have it available, and they have to be able to take all the information at hand, all the data, and translate it into product features and meaning. So that's already a thing today, but I think it's still more spread across different domains. And also the knowledge is not as concise and compact on one spot. So this will become a bigger responsibility in the future. I think storytelling will become even more important because if you have 100 ideas that all fulfill the requirements according to the AI and the design brief and the client, right? So which concept are you choosing? Do you choose the one that you like best? Does the client choose the one that they like best? Just aesthetically speaking, do we choose the one that we think is the most in line with the trend or with the aesthetic sense of our target group? So in that sense, storytelling is very important. If you have 20 different concepts and 19 of them you don't have any background, but from one you know that that there's a reference to the local place where this is being manufactured, right? The wood that is being used is Japanese wood, and this product is a Japanese product, and the shaping is referring to the design from the last 5 years. So that way we generate meaning and we implement it into the design, right? And so you have to be able to do it in the future even more so because the selection will be much broader. So the concept that will be chosen is the one where most meaning can be instilled into or can be found intrinsically or identified easily. All right. And I also think that curation and strategy will be more important for designers, right? Because just the sheer number of designs and concepts will increase with the use of AI. They have to be more curative and make selections that is worth and valuable, right? So how do you choose the right concepts again, right? What's the right strategy? How do we align our ideas with the marketing strategy? And where will we be willing to actually invest the money to produce the first samples? If we have such a big pool of potential solutions, where do we have to put the money? So I think these things will be relevant for the designer of the future. And when I look at this list that I made myself, right, I feel like the work is much less creative than it is at the moment. And it's not necessarily a designer anymore, but it's like a product developer, I would say. So the training for a person like this is also very different. So I think the role of a designer potentially will blend with the role of an engineer and of a marketeer and all these different, and a researcher, right? And all these people from these different domains can potentially fulfill the same function and create similar outputs with slightly different emphasis. But I feel like it's not the design job anymore that it is today or that it was 10 years ago. So lastly, before I finish this video, I want to basically describe a day in the life of a designer in 2030. And maybe 2030 is a little bit fast, but things evolve super quickly. But let me share with you how I think the day of the future designer will look like, right? So you get up in the morning, you go to work, or maybe you work at home, remote work, right? And you receive a new client brief. And this brief is already formulated by your AI agent. So you understand exactly what it means, and it was being received from the AI agent of your client, and the AIs have exchanged their information in such a way that you get the most out of it and the client is most best represented, right? So you get the brief and it includes the desired styling, potentially with already images of how the concept should look like, a market analysis summary, a proposed course of action, what steps should be taken, and all the things that you could potentially just check off your list and follow through. Then I think within 2 hours, you will have to be able to show 20 to 100 different concepts that you developed or curated based on the brief with AI, right? And then 2 hours later, you will then review these concepts with the client's AI and filter for relevant selection. All these concepts are represented and presented to the highest fidelity level. And I think that small projects will immediately be continued based on the decision that the client AI agent is doing, while big ones still require the approval of the client personally, right? And big ones are financially expensive ones. So after 2 hours, you had this initial pre-selection of the concepts, and now you have, I would say, 4 hours or so to develop the selected concepts into 3D models in parallel, right? So that at the end of these 4 hours, you have maybe 5 concepts or more available with a clear overview of what costs could look like for each of these concepts, what manufacturing techniques would be used for these concepts, when would they be available, the first out of tool, the first samples, when would they be available. And then the AI agents, again, would propose the most economic options for you. And maybe that you will have to discuss again with the client, right? But basically you have, let's say, 5 completely finished designs, all of them fulfilling the requirements. And I think you will spend most of your time fixing issues that AI cannot fix automatically, right? So after you send out all these concepts, there is probably some time required before the client actually has the first samples in their hands to make the next iteration decisions, next level decisions, right? So you would have time to refine some ideas, adjust some properties, or identify other opportunities by comparing the output to the available data, right? And market insights, or you get to work on another client's brief. And once the first samples have been reviewed by the client, the project goes into a second loop of refinement or production, or it goes straight into production. Right, so that was one day where potentially a entire product development lifecycle or product development cycle is crammed into. And the designer didn't sketch a thing, and they basically were just debugging the output that AI generated. They didn't communicate a thing, they just communicated with the AI that communicated again with other AIs. So, I don't know, somehow this turned a little bit darker and grimmer than I thought, because I'm actually a proponent of trying to find ways to integrate AI in a meaningful way, right? In a valuable way. It can facilitate and help us as designers create more beautiful work. But if I look at the extreme, the picture that I painted here, then it doesn't feel that much like design anymore at all. But let's see if this becomes true or not. Also, the AI agents, and do I have my personal one that I designed myself? And is that a key differentiator to other designers, like my AI agent, and how they decipher the requirements and the requests from the AI agents of my clients, and how they validate and evaluate the idea output that I generated or curated? Is that a differentiator? So will there be people selling better AI agents for industrial design and AI agents for other jobs, and the one that sells the best ones are the most successful designers? I don't know. Maybe that's how it's going to be like. All right. I hope in this video you were able to get a glimpse of the future, of how potential looks like. Let me know if you agree or disagree, because this is a highly controversial and also far out there topic and discussion, but it's important and relevant. So what is your idea? How will design look like? How will AI change the landscape of design? Are you using AI already? If not, why not? Let me know. If you like this video, subscribe and follow for more. See you around. Thank you very much.